U.S. weapons manufacturer Lockheed Martin is reportedly pitching new jobs for Canada. But that offer depends on Ottawa sticking to its plan to buy Lockheed's F-35 fighter jets. So last week, Prime Minister Mark Carney ordered a review of Canada's contract to buy 88 F-35 fighter jets as he looks to build new security relationships that are outside of our relationship with the U.S. A source is telling the Globe and Mail that Lockheed Martin is pledging to create jobs that'll stay here in Canada, but only if that review is called off. So for more on our country's options this morning, we're joined from Ottawa by David Perry. He's the president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Welcome to your morning.
Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's set this up for everybody. Canada has the option to look for alternative suppliers after the first 16 of the 88 ordered F-35 jets are delivered. So on Monday, Prime Minister Mark Carney said that it is prudent and in the best interest of Canada to take a second look at this contract. So how could Lockheed Martin's offer change that calculation?
So I guess to a certain extent, we don't really fully know because you could review a whole number of different things. The economic contributions, that's part of it. And so it certainly seems like, based on the reporting, that what Lockheed offered is a stronger economic benefits package, basically, than had been put on the table before. But a review could entail a whole number of things, including, I think, the more important thing, given the context with the U.S. administration, about how reliably Canada can bank on actually getting access to not just the airplanes that the supplier in Lockheed would produce, but really whether or not the United States government was going to fully support the sale over the next roughly 75 years that Canada would need to be able to operate those planes.
Yeah, when we dig a little, I mean, jobs sounds great, but let's take a look at what that actually means. The building and maintenance of F-35 jets, we know, is centered in the U.S. So then what parts of that supply chain could they actually bring to Canada that would bring the jobs?
So I think my guess would be what's most likely being discussed here is enhancing some of the maintenance and in-service support that would happen in Canada. The Trudeau government in the last couple of months had announced that they're going to identify a strategic partner to provide that maintenance. But there's sort of a quantity and quality type of arrangement that are adjustable when it comes to that in-service support. What could be being put on the table is Lockheed transferring either greater quality of the work in terms of having some more higher value maintenance functions provided in Canada, or also having a broader scope of the work in terms of the person hours of maintenance on each individual jet come to Canada. But I'm really just kind of guessing at that.
Prime Minister Carney just came off this European tour, and of note, it's that he went to Europe first before he's even had discussions with the United States. This is in part because he wants to work with Europe to try and diversify not only our defense supply chains, but our trade supply chains as well. Lockheed Martin is the U.S. largest weapons manufacturer, and the cost for buying those 88 fighter jets is $19 billion. If Canada were to accept Lockheed's offer, doesn't that then just make us more dependent on the United States?
So I think we need to think about those kinds of relationships in totality, and also keep in mind that we have been on a very, very long and tortuous path to get to the point we're at today of having made the commitment for an initial 16 airplanes. But really, we should have done that a decade and a half ago. I think in a broader sense, what Prime Minister Carney is doing is looking at kind of the entire breadth of our defense investments and looking to have a bit more diversity in some of those supply chains potentially. So right now we are quite reliant on the United States for a lot of those supply chains. Most of our major systems do come from the United States, and at least my sense of what Prime Minister Carney is looking at is saying that we should probably get a little bit more diversity of supply. It's tricky to do, though, given that we are pretty late in modernizing in a number of different ways, and if we wouldn't move forward as intended with some of our contracts with the United States, there'd be really significant negative impacts on the Canadian military for the next 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, Sweden, one of those countries that we're looking at as possibly this, diversifying this relationship. I want to ask you about our military as a whole. The Royal Canadian Air Force has flown the current set of CF-18 jets since 1982. I mean, they are decades old. Experts are warning they are increasingly becoming obsolete. So even under this current contract, all of the 88 F-35 jets aren't even going to be delivered until 2032. So here's the question. Given the state of our security and the conversations we're having these days, can our military afford to wait even longer?
And I think in short, no. And they really can't in a lot of senses, and that's why this is a really difficult set of circumstances to be in with acrimonious or hostile relations with the United States president, because we were on a path to start moving forward in the next few years with big deliveries of significant orders of new pieces of equipment, lots of it coming from the United States, and much of it is overdue. So as you said, 1982 is not a good year to have been taking delivery of something that you really wanted to only be a maximum of 20 years old to keep the technology fresh and the plane most reliable. We have the same kind of dynamic with our ships. They're far too old too, so any interruption and dislocation we'd introduce right now would have really significant implications for how operationally ready our military is, when it's at a time when, in part because of the advanced age of a bunch of platforms, the operational readiness of the Canadian military is at about a 20 to 30 year low point right now.
Wow. Well, and this is all interesting conversation, and you'll see some of this online in other places. Do we want to be buying and relying on the supply for our security if we're trying to secure ourselves at some point against the United States? It's around and round, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. David Perry, president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute, thanks for your insight this morning. We'll be right back. If you like that video, make sure to subscribe to the Your Morning YouTube feed, where you can find all kinds of new content posted every weekday morning.